Greetings, my name is Susie Olson with the Olmsted County Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program, presenting to you today information about gardening in small spaces and container gardening. This is a recording we did for 125 Live. My moderator for that was Jane Barton, and she has been a Master Gardener leadership person for many years in the Master Gardener program, and she helped collect information and made sure that if we had questions we could gather that if I didn't have it included in the presentation. So some of the information comes from her additional research, and I appreciated her help with that. So a question we like to ask as we begin our presentations from the Master Gardener program is, who are you and why are you joining us? Do we have any teens, elderly, maybe children that are interested, young middle school age children interested in gardening and especially in small spaces? Do we have any diversity? Are we reaching out to our communities like we want to? And where are you from? Are you outside of Olmsted County in greater Minnesota or in other states? Can you let us know these answers in the comments? And then why are you joining us? Do you live in an apartment? Maybe you just have a balcony. Are you renting and need to figure out, yeah, I'd like to do a little of my own, grow my own produce, and how do I do that as a renter? Maybe you do have a really small yard like I do. Maybe you're interested in pollinators or fresh flowers for your own use. Fresh produce so you can help supplement some of the nutrition in your diet for you and your family. And again, maybe you're interested in pollinators. The University of Minnesota Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program uses research-based horticulture knowledge and practices to deliver educational outreach and project-based efforts that inspire, change, and promote health, healthy people, communities, and planet. The University of Minnesota gives us 7 areas that we want to focus on as we do our volunteer work for the Master Gardener program in Minnesota and Olmsted County specifically. The areas that are connected to this presentation are horticulture skills, of course, and you're adding some plant biodiversity and pollinators when you change up your grassy areas and plant some flowers and produce. And of course, we're talking about your yard, so nearby nature, and the benefits that we have when we add more diversity, plant diversity to our environment. Our class today is going to help participants consider best practices to establish growing spaces no matter how much room is available to allow for both edibles and non-edible plants. And the 4 areas of focus are again listed on the bottom. So a little bit about me on my home, my small little yard in northwest Rochester, just down the street from John Marshall High School. Here's a snapshot of what we have. It didn't look like this 30-some years ago when we purchased this house. A couple raised beds, the fence was there, but there was no 3-season porch. You get a glimpse of that on the far left here, this photo. We didn't have any of these raised beds. This is actually a green roof. Hammock, sandbox. We've got 9 grandkids. Swing set. Usually there's a swing set hung here. Maybe this year we didn't. Lots of house plants come outside every year along the north side of this 3-season porch. This patio wasn't here. This was a bad idea. We all we all keep learning. This poor maple tree has been through a lot of stress, but still grows fine. I should have never built this. Back when I did, the roots are not happy down here. This tree is not going to last. So, other raised beds. This is all steppables in this area. So I have lots and lots of places where pollinators can have a little snack. Water features. Yes, this is where is it? Where's my dragon here? No, there's my dragon in this picture. Here he is close up. So lots of different things going on in the backyard. And here's the front yard. So this is, I'm going to go with the only Candyland, full-size Candyland painted on a driveway in Minnesota. So we'll just go with that, but yeah. And this is probably the largest birch clump, so we have lots and lots in largest birch clump in Minnesota. There was another one measured a little bit bigger in northern Minnesota many years ago, but yes, we have lots of shade, lots of roots. So we're careful not to get too much over the top of these roots, because there are some aerial roots on some trees, like the maples and the birch. But we do plant in between where we can and amend the soil where we can. Rain garden along this side, and along the other side, there's actually a rain garden downspout that I redid on both sides of the house and on this side of the garage. And then you see this long strip here along the side of the driveway. Part of that belongs to my neighbor, but they are very willing to let us borrow some of that. And so we have about 12 inches along here. And I'll show another picture of that. Lots of hostas, but I have added a lot of native plants. Here you see a boulevard planting as well. You can utilize the boulevard here in Olmsted County, or the city of Rochester, with a permit. So you do want to check that, and there is a link in the handout that is included in the description of this presentation. Here's along the driveway that I showed you right here, this strip. Mostly flowers. We do like a lot of flowers, but I do fight my husband for space for vegetables as well. And here we see we have a dwarf mock orange. We do work a lot with dwarf trees, so make a little notation about that. That isn't in the handout, but dwarfs are great for small spaces as well. This was a tomato sharing plant on the end of the driveway that I did last year. And yes, I said I have Candyland. I have dice to play with. So any of the kids passing by, they know that they can do that, the neighbor kids. And another kindness for my neighbor, that he can mow right on top of these bricks. So there was a little bit of work amending the soil along the driveway, providing my neighbor with something to put his tire on so he could trim the way he wanted to. And then we do a lot of container planting as well. So this is 1 year's snapshot of some of my plantings. This has actually got a lot more during the summer. A lot of these get tipped, like this copper and zinc pot gets tipped sideways. A lot goes under. I've got a deep spot under my house and in the garage where I have plantings that are pots that go underneath to protect them under this bench. This has tin on top so the moisture doesn't get in the pots and ruin them over the winter. So you do have to have a place to store your pots over the winter if you're going to do the container planting. I also have about 200 house plants. My husband's really interested in that. So this begonia, for instance, looks pretty pathetic by the time spring rolls around. But as soon as spring comes, it really perks up and does great. These coleuses look terrible right now. I just did some cutting off of them and have them in rooting for spring a little early, but they did look leggy, so I needed to trim them back some. This is a north window, so it slows them down, and anything in the winter or late fall is going to slow down. Epiphylium grows all the way to the floor. That goes out. And if you take a look at the end of this video, I do have a presentation coming up on growing house plants and some tips and tricks to keep things alive, including this shelving idea that I built along my south window here, and then in the north. This did have a nice cushion. You see we put in a bay window, and I had thought that would be a great sitting place. Well, the plants did get their way and wiggled their way into that window. So let's get started and talk about so those pictures gave you some idea of gardening in small spaces for me in my small area. But why do you want to, do this? What do you want to grow? Here's a little shop of horror plant. That's probably not what you're thinking of, but what are you interested in? How much space do you have? How is this smaller yard than mine? There's bigger yards, smaller yards, and do you own or rent, and how to negotiate and work through that rental situation to grow your own produce or flowers as well, but produce especially. How much light do you have? That's going to also impact the amount of produce that you can grow. And there are things that will tolerate some lower light, so I have those listed shortly. Speaking of what's listed for you, I have Let's move this over a little bit. A handout for you that I had mentioned. It's in the description of this presentation. Anything with a star on these pages of my presentation indicates that a link is provided, and all links are provided are best practice extension research-based information or links unless indicated. So almost everything is University of Minnesota, or I should say university best practices throughout the country. So they're extension or horticulture all through United States, and I've researched best practices throughout. This very first link, you can see I'm highlighting with my cursor, is a link to this worksheet that you may or may not want to use as you plan your garden. Also want to point out that instructions or suggestions for my shelving inside for houseplants. I do have some on this page and then this page as well. And then the very end of this will give you information of upcoming Olmsted County Extension Master Gardener Volunteer presentations here in 2021 that are coming up this spring. Information on how to contact a Master Gardener in Olmsted County, and information about becoming a Master Gardener will be listed also on that handout. So, Gardening in Small Spaces worksheet. What is that? I just mentioned to you. Well, here is what I would have used back in the day, and I have done some planning, but really my yard has been a 30-year evolution with taking out grass. So let's define the growing area. Here at my front yard, for instance, was mostly full shade, part sun along the driveway, and there was more sun, of course, in the spring, so I could plant some bulbs, spring bulbs, as they developed and the sun became less and less with the filling in of those leaves on that large birch tree. I needed to think about pretty much full shade. So the shallow roots, the amendment of the soil, defining a way to get my rain garden in, as that meant I needed to cut some cement to divert the water and the rain from the roof. And just on a little aside, if you are interested in helping our rivers to be more healthy, getting that rainwater that goes off your roof, off your driveway, off those hardscapes, hard surfaces, there are grants around the country. There are grants available. Realizing Rain Gardens. It's not a link I provided, unfortunately, but Realizing Rain Gardens, just Google that for Rochester, Minnesota, and there are grants to get rain gardens, matching grant to get rain gardens in your own yard. So the top row, like I said, says how much light do you have, mostly full shade, what do you want to grow, and here it's defined. Foundation plantings were already here, for the most part native plants, rain garden pathway, shade perennials, a couple shrubs, and along the driveway then, which is listed down here, my tomatoes, some other vegetables, strawberry tower. So this is a worksheet that's going to be available to you. But as you plan, you want to consider things like function. What do you want? You want perennials, you want some privacy, you want a place to hang out with family and a fire pit. Are you talking about growing vegetables? Environmental practices. Once you grow those plants, you can't put sticks and debris from when the tomatoes are done, all those branches in your garbage. You need to know what to do with that. So environmental practices. What is your budget? Do you have the dollars now, or do you need to maybe have a long and short-term plan? Visual appeal. Is this in the front yard? You want to have it pleasant to look at. Some cities ordinances are you can't plant anything in the front yard except foundation planting and maybe a few other small things, but you can't do vegetable gardening. So that's something else to consider. And sustainability. So let's take a look at these one by one. So let's talk a little bit about function. What do you want for your space, your small living space? Do you want a place to entertain? Do you want a place for the kids to play? Maybe a dog will run as well. Here my new little Siamese kitten wants me to plant some catnip. And could that integrate in with some of the perennials you want to plant or vegetables you have? Maybe you just want to do some square foot raised gardening. Yeah. Stop. So let's talk about function. What are you hoping to provide for you and your family and in your small garden space? You're looking for some entertaining space, maybe a fire pit. How about a play area for the kids or a dog run? Here my new little Siamese kitten is dreaming about catnip. It spreads quite a bit, so there's plants I may not want to consider if they're real aggressive. How about a perennial area and maybe integrating and incorporating some vegetable area, especially in a space like this. This is not a small garden area, by the way, but where you have lots of sun and your perennials and your vegetables will grow nicely together. Maybe it's straight up vegetables and some raised beds you'd like to have. As you proceed, you want to consider environmental practices. Composting, maybe having some natives, good for our pollinators. Maybe you want to harvest your rain. Get those downspouts. Here's an example of a nice rain barrel. It's got a spout in the bottom you could hook a hose to. It's got a good overflow area, valve or a place to put an overflow. And it is sealed on top. You see the downspout goes right into here as it overfills. It maybe goes to a rain garden area, a depression in the soil. Rain gardens are great. I don't have a link connected, as I mentioned, about realizing rain gardens in Rochester, Minnesota, but that's something that you can easily Google and get that rainwater from going into our rivers and causing algae blooms and other pollutants, killing our fish and harming our wetlands. This is a great option, but you can also take a Rubbermaid type container that you would have, cut a hole in the top, get a hose connected in here easily with some minor hardware that you can pick up at the hardware store, and not even worry about a downspout or a spigot in the bottom. You can just lift the lid and take it off. Remember, if you have a larger hole on the top, you want to make sure you have some kind of small mesh so you don't have a mosquito hatch. Compost is a really great thing to consider as well, whether you're a renter, apartment dweller. There's all kinds of options we'll talk about shortly. Chemical practices, we'll also talk a little bit about that as we proceed. So environmental, taking care of our environment, taking care of what we can maintain. Then there's the budget costs. What kind of money do you have to spend on it? Is it something you want to do long or short-term goals with? Maybe you'd like something a little bit more private and a little more fancy, per se. But let's maybe start with something a little simpler. It's great for trellising. Here we have cedar boards. You want to make sure that your lumber that you're using isn't treated. And if you're growing vegetables, you want to make sure that it's chemical free. And just simple bamboos, some string. You get some nice peas out of this. And how about using something as simple as bricks for your flower areas? That would work great. There is some leaching that can go on as far as chemicals in the bricks. Some not always recommended for food items. But there's other options as well. Just simple things that you find. I'm a good finder. Find things alongside the road even. The giveaways and repurpose those. There's a lot of great options out there. And then there's visually appealing. Is it your front yard? Do you have an ordinance in your area that says you shouldn't have that vegetable garden in the front? Our community doesn't have that issue. There are boulevard guidelines, as I mentioned earlier. But year-round appeal is another thing. This is a focal point along my driveway that doesn't always give me this gorgeous display of blooms. This is a native prickly pear cactus that I believe it was last year, in 2020, that I had this amazing explosion of yellow along the driveway. How about combining textures? Finding a focal point. Seeding, maybe you can have a pathway of rock or bark to guide people to seeding where they can get a great view of what you have planted. A showy plant is always nice, or shrub. Curved lines are very appealing. And then considering the height of the plant as it matures. Is it going to overshadow another plant behind it? Is it going to highlight that plant as well? Sustainability and maintenance is important to consider as well. What's the shoveling going to be like? Are there going to be issues in order to where that snow is going to go in the winter? Maybe you're considering a particular plant but haven't taken into account the height of that plant. Are you going to be able to keep up with it and keep it trimmed back to maintain that? Or maybe it's raspberries you want. Raspberries can be very aggressive, along with a few other plants like obedience plant, wisteria, snow in the mountain. Kiss me under the garden gate is another one. I don't have the botanical name for that or these others right in my head. But these all can be very aggressive. Raspberries are great and we love to eat them, but you put them up against your neighbor's property and you're going to have some issues, as they will soon become, they'll become a nice stand of raspberries on their side of the fence as well. So considering what a plant's behavior is, and then can you mow? Can you get to those areas that you have left in grass to mow? I have a spot that I need to do something with this next spring and summer. I have to drive my electric lawnmower over the top of a bit of a wooden border and then some mulch, and I've got things for the grandkids in there. It's a pain to mow. So consider where you've locked in your grassy areas and can you get to those. If you have any questions regarding this section on function and beyond, go ahead and mark those in the area below: environmental issues, budget costs, visually appealing, maintenance, and sustainability. So let's go on to the next section, watering. What is the proximity of your water source? Good thing to consider, because in the heat of the summer, you're going to need to water your plants. Do you have hoses enough? Hoses can be expensive. And if you're on a budget, like it's very typical, I've been on a budget in the past more so. Now I have pretty much what I need. But it took a while. I had to do some long-term planning. I bought some cheaper ones at Savers or Goodwill or rummage sales and then upgraded. Watering cans, you can find everything from a bucket to a sprinkling can. Those ends on the hoses too are very easy to find at a Saver. The watering wands, which is nice, especially if you have seedlings. You want to water them gently. Rain barrels we talked about. That's the best water for your plants. But if you don't have that available, you'll use it right from your faucet up the outside of your house. And when are you watering? Morning is the best time to do, especially in the heat of the summer. Evenings are not a good time to water. You're going to end up with a lot of moisture sitting there on your plants, underneath your plants. You're going to have some mildew, molds, and other pathogens that are going to impact your plants. Watering regularly for those seedlings, those new transplants, and gently as well for those new plants. And always, always water the roots. Don't be watering your leaves. That's not where you need the water. You need to get that down on the roots. Even if you're watering in the morning, I know they'll evaporate. Water the heat of the day, you're going to burn your leaves. That little water droplet on your leaves is acting like a magnifying glass. It's going to cause some burn. Also want to consider improving your soil. If you are new in a small house, if you're a renter, you're not going to worry about this so much because you're probably not going to be able to plant in the ground. But testing that soil, there's test kits out there from the University of Minnesota. That link is on, as denoted with the star. The link is on your handout. And what does your plant need? Just a little reminder with the NPK nutrients that your plants need. I like to give myself little games in order to remember what those stand for. P is for the pretty part of your plant, the flower. That's the phosphorus. N, so the N starts with the nitrogen, and that's the nodes, leaf nodes. So think about the nodes, and that's for the green part. Helps the growth of your plant. P is then for the pretty part. And then the K is kick the dirt. It's about feeding the roots. Kick the dirt, you're going to find those roots, and that's what potassium is, the K part. Contain your pots. You're going to find pretty much what you need in the potting soil you purchase, but you can make your own too, and I have recipes for you. Starting your seeds, it's going to be a pretty basic component. There's not going to be a lot of nutrients in there. You just want a nice substance, a nice characteristic in your soil so the roots can grow easily down into the mix as you transplant them into a more nutritious mix of soil. And that pretty much is easy to find in the stores, although there's recipes for that as well. When we're talking about in-ground planting too, I wanted to mention that amending your soil, adding compost and organic matter is going to just do wonders for your soil. And we'll talk a little bit more about some different methods and ways you can do that easily and also utilize those leaves that fall and your compost and other things that are readily available to you that can really make a difference in how well your plants do, and it helps provide that oxygen that's needed as well as the nutrients. So we did mention composting, and I wanted to highlight that because it is so good for the environment to take those things that you normally put in the trash that would go into the landfills or incinerators. Why not make them work for you? There's a few different methods out there, and there are methods that work for the apartment dwellers. So let's take a look at that first, since I mentioned that. Here's one called bokashi. It's just a little container. You add activator in there. It comes with a little masher. There's a number of different types of bins you can purchase or get that will help break down your food that you otherwise would waste, the leftovers on the kids' plates. And this particular system does use the meat, which this is a university, not U of M, but a university source that you'll find on these links on your handouts unless otherwise designated. And it breaks all that waste down into a liquid fertilizer that you can use indoors and on your outdoor plants as well. This is a great one, like I said, for the apartment dweller. And there are other options as well. If you don't have a lot of scraps that or debris outside that you have, this is another method. It's called the green cone solar, i.e. you need to make sure it's in the heat of the sun, composting. That just is for food scraps. You're not going to put your branches, your leaves, that kind of compost in there. There are other compost bins. So we're mostly talking about this particular method. You would just be putting nutrients in the proximity of this green cone solar composting. It's nothing you stir. It's nothing you have to remove. It all breaks down. It turns into a liquid down below. So if you've got high need plants around this area, like your tomatoes, plants that need a lot of fertilizer, this would be a great place to plant those plants. So lots of great options for composting. Don't consider this is not an option for you if you have a small yard or if you're an apartment or renter. Vermiculture I didn't mention, and there's not a picture of that, but vermiculture is all about the worms that break down the food scraps that you have. And it's not an outdoor thing. This is just totally for indoor composting. All kinds of great information. Vermiculture is super popular and super effective in taking care of that food waste. Great for kids. It just teaches them a lot about the whole cycle of living and what the benefits are of different creatures and animals in our environment, in our world. Okay, now let us know if you have any questions about water, improving your soil, or composting. And just mention that in the comments below. Again, a colleague of mine, Olmsted County Master Gardener, I will get back to you if you have any questions or comments. So let's talk about planning your garden area. Now again, if you are a new homeowner or you have never really considered growing your own food, but you know you have a little bit of lawn, how do you plan? How do you move ahead? Well, here's one way you can do it, is just get out the paper and pencil and get kind of an idea how big your property is, what you have for trees, what you have for shade, what you have for sun, what that driveway looks like. If you can plant on either side. This would be great if you've got full sun like this along a driveway, but I don't. My house is next to the driveway, and I smash what I can up next to the house, and then utilize, like I said, some of my neighbors and my property, but 12 inches alongside there. So what can you plant? What do you need? Where do you have some sun? What you can do with those shady areas. We love, love, love our shade. Our backyard is so much cooler than anything else in our neighborhood. We've got sitting areas, play areas under those great big beautiful trees. Garden tool planning. This isn't a university link, but it is. It does give you some options on drawing out those using some of the tools available on this app. As you design and plan, I know I mentioned that I had my little graphic, my little tools, what I have on the north side, south side, east, west, what I have by my driveway, and so on in my yard, and how much light I have, what I can grow there, what I want to do with that. What do you want to grow? Vegetables, perennials listed in those areas. If you've got the north side, what you can grow, probably not a whole lot, perennial or vegetable wise, except for the leafy greens. But there are many perennials, the hostas, many other native plants that are great for pollinators. And to define the space, consider the therapy, reflect on what maintenance and the cost of that. Is it a long-term or short-term goal? Again, this is that document, that worksheet that I provided for you that you can use if you would like. So what techniques fit your need? What techniques will work for you? Here's one that I just recently learned about in the last couple of years. It's called lasagna gardening. It's a layered system. Here you've got a little trench around the edge. Started putting down newspaper, cardboard, wet it down good. Here it shows the cardboard, newspaper right on top of the grass. This looks like almost looks like they tore up some of this blacktop to plant here. Anyway, it'll work on any surface that gets you to the dirt. So it doesn't have to be right on grass. But hey, don't worry about tilling that grass up. Don't worry about removing that grass. I shouldn't even say tilling the grass, because then you got to pluck all that grass up. It's just so much work, and I've done it over and over again on my, as you noticed in my pictures, I don't have much grass, and a lot of that was digging it up. But I could have established those gardens by laying down cardboard, and that's what I'm doing, having my daughter do, and my sons have done, putting down different layers. Here it's got aged manure, compost will work, chopped leaves, peat moss in between everything. This is a pretty complex layering system. It doesn't have to have all this in there. It can have sticks next, then some leaves, then throw in the kitchen scraps, some straw. Straw is great in there. Again, this is causing a way to loosen up the soil. A lot of times those grassy areas are super compressed, super compacted, and all that works down in and helps bring back some life and potential to this piece of earth. And compost on top, some soil. This, like I said, this is a lot of layers, and this isn't as necessary. So it just gives you an idea. It looks like it's 12 inches deep, but when you're done, you've got a nice, little bit raised area of soil. You can use it in boxes, like this box here. That could have been layered with the lasagna gardening method. But there are a lot of recipes. Here's a little bit. I like this graphic better. It's a master composter site. This was from the university, not of Minnesota necessarily. This is just to let you know that I'm speaking to you from the University of Minnesota as a master gardener. But layer one can be, the 10 to 15 sheets of overlapping newspaper or thick cardboard to kill the grass, wet it down good. Add a layer of woody materials, small, medium-sized branches, and some dried leaves on top of that. The next layer can have everything, alternating layers of vegetable scraps, fresh cut grass, manure, dried materials like leaves, straw, paper. And the last layer you want to, if you want to plant right away, is your compost or soil. Really like this graphic. Hey, if you know how to take screenshots, I'm going to move where am I move this? Move this down here, and print this print screen button on your computer. A lot of phones, you tap on simultaneously tap on the buttons on either side of your iPad or your phone. You can take a screenshot of this. Otherwise, Google images on lasagna gardening and find one that will work for you, for the materials you have available to you in your area, and that you can get compost from the county out at the reclamation center in your own backyard. Sticks, my birch tree is shedding all the time. Those can go in there. Any of the scraps that you have from your perennials, in the spring that you've got, if you've got some flowers in your garden, those all go in and will break down and add to the benefit, the health of your garden, your new garden area. Here's another one, hugelkultur. Similar concept in many ways, although it is it's more of a domed raised type of gardening system. Here we've got some large logs. Here we have them laying down horizontal. These are vertical, and they actually break down a little bit better. The water seeps into those stumps that you've got cut and laid in there a little bit faster. Smaller sticks, some dirt and wood chips, leaves, thicker sticks tucked and stuck in there, straw, grass clippings, all that can go in there. Here it's buried a little bit, which is a little nicer, I think. It kind of keeps it in place. This looks like a huge amount, but it does compress and break down, or not break down, but it compresses, fills in those open areas. It's not like we're stomping on it or anything. It's just, you're just layering that. And look at all the extra growing space you have. It, like I said, it'll lower it down and compress a little bit. Here we've got some wood borders on this, which is kind of nice too. It's a great system to use. Then there's the raised beds, and hugelkultur and lasagna gardening work great for that as well. It's great for kids, great for elderly, and speaking for myself, I'm in my 60s, and it's harder and harder to bend over. If you do work on the ground, make sure you have some nice knee pads or something to kneel on. Even a folded over old rug helps to save those knees that have been abused over the years. So this, like I said, works great for layering, and especially the lasagna garden, you can get that layering in there and keep that soil. And of course you're going to use potting soil with this, which will lighten it up. Growing up, I have lots of lots of things that I grow up. I'm going to be doing coffee cans, metal coffee cans. I try not to buy my coffee in plastic. I try to stay away from the plastic, but metal coffee cans this year. I'm going to do a little bit of container gardening that way. And we have a mix of things here where we just utilize all the grass. Here's that method using the shoe bags, and they won't last forever, of course, but they give you some nice places for those plants, herbs that don't need as much soil. And then there's the square foot gardening. Mel Bartholomew back in I think it was the 80s, made this popular. I love this graphic that came from one of the universities where it showed you how much can fit in each one of these small areas. So you take a look, and 9 onions can fit in a square foot, 4 heads of lettuce, 6 carrots, 1 tomato. I'd have a tomato here all the way through. Anyway, I love my tomatoes. And yeah, so it's just a nice little graphic. And again, if you want to take a screenshot of that or Google square foot gardening plans, this one is actually from garden365.com. So it's not a university graphic, but I do like that one a lot. And there's many sources from universities around the country that'll talk about square foot gardening. So you can put, like here it shows just string in between each of these squares, or you can make it a little fancier with strips of cedar or wood that's not been chemically treated. Here they've got the archway over the top, and this PVC type arc would be connected with screws to the board, and that's not for trellising so much. Things will grow on it. You need a little bit more. It's going to slide right down. It's not going to grow up there like you want, but this is really for hoop gardening, which will extend and lengthen your growing season. Raised beds will extend or lengthen your growing season as well, starting a little early in the spring. Your soil will warm up a little bit faster than those raised beds, but this is to throw some plastic over the top to provide a little greenhouse effect for that. Then where do you get your seeds? Well, there's lots of places you can get your seeds. The Seed Library in Olmsted County, Rochester, Minnesota, has lots and lots of seeds available for you. Lots of vegetable seeds, but you're also going to get some native plant seeds. I've donated myself, so I know that they're part of that library. It's a checkout system, not that you return anything, of course, but you only can check out so many of the seeds that they've purchased, the vegetables, mostly vegetable seeds, although some have been donated and they don't have a limit how many packages you can take, but you can only, each visit, take only a few packages at a time, just to make sure everyone gets a chance. When you're going to be looking at those seeds, you want to make sure to read the back of your package. Seeds like tomatoes, of course, you're going to be planting those indoors. That's why we buy our tomato plants. If you don't grow or start your own seedlings, you're going to be planting them indoors, and there'll be training coming up, information on the University of Minnesota Olmsted County Facebook page, as well as many other resources. So I want to pay attention to that. Getting them, sharing them. If you're starting seeds, you're going to probably find a lot germinate more than you need. So share those seedlings too, and then educate some of your friends and family as to how to plant those. Talked a little bit about potting mixes. Here's a great one. I'll move my screen sharing, whatever this is called, my camera off to the side a little bit so you can take a look at this recipe. It's a great general recipe for potted plants. Again, we're not going to take our soil from our gardens and put them in pots and hope for success, because we're going to find a lot of compression. We need to add that peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, maybe some more compost, maybe some fine sand. Some of these are suggestions that you wouldn't necessarily put in, like lime, depending on the pH of your mix. But this is a great basic one, and there's lots of great ones for container gardening that you'll find that I've included on the U of M link that's in your handout. If you have some soil that you've already used, you think, well, do I dump that in the compost, or use it in the garden, or I don't throw it away? Well, you can pasteurize some of that. So here's a recipe. In warm weather, you'll seal that potting soil that you've had, leave it in the sun and make sure it's moist, damp, and get it up to 140 degrees. And there are different thermometers you can use out there to test that for about 30 minutes to kill the pathogens, and then you'll still have your beneficial organisms survive that. You also want to not only quote-unquote sterilize or pasteurize then your potting soil, but you want to sterilize the tools you use too. In the fall, once you've put them away, I hope you put them away clean. If you have tools, or if you're going to be buying tools, make sure you clean them well when you bring them home from Savers, or if you buy them new, they're fine, but 10% bleach solution will help clean those up in the fall. Then just a little bit of oil on there, something to keep them from rusting. And since we're on the subject of tools, what does a beginning gardener need? Well, a garden trowel is a perfect thing to utilize. Just a little handheld trowel. Here's one style. Someone was saying that there is a great one like at Ace Hardware or at Home Depot that's called the D tools that have a nice grip to them. Garden gloves. Knee pads or kneeler pad is, for me at my age, super important. I don't know if you've got bad knees, but I got some knees that can pain me, so that's always nice to have. Containers, of course, and there's so many different kinds of containers, from the coffee can that I mentioned to just what they they come in and it goes up from there. Container size recommendation for veggies is listed here. Super important to take a look at or review as you consider what plants you're going to be growing. Make sure that there's enough soil for that plant to thrive. If you're going to be growing vines or tomatoes, bamboo sticks are cheap and super helpful. They have enough texture or enough gripping area on there for your plants to grow up. Some twine to hold those together. Of course, scissors. If you're going to do in-ground work, you maybe want a little bit more aggressive or larger, I should say, tools like a shovel. All these can be purchased at rummage sales, Restore that helps Habitat for Humanity, and a weed digger too. A little tool like this will really be helpful. And one thing that we use for our potting soil to scoop it up, you can use almost anything, but if you've, like me, have kids that love to give those great big mugs that says best dad in the world, it's a great scooper to dig out that. Coffee gets so cold so fast in that. It's good for soup, but it's also great for digging out that potting soil and filling up your pots. One thing I also should mention, in the bottom of those pots, it's easy to, when you're watering, when it's raining hard outside, for the soil to go all through the bottom. Coffee filters work great. They can handle that water, unlike a paper towel that'll eventually break down, and a little faster. Coffee filters will break down too. But yeah, put those on the bottom of your pots, and that's going to keep your soil where it belongs, in the pot. So if we have any questions regarding the gardening tools, plenty of your growing area, design, prep, all those different techniques, lasagna gardening, square foot gardening, seeds, seed savers, how to pick up seeds during the COVID time, all that will be listed or can be found then if you ask those questions on the University of Minnesota Olmsted County website, Facebook page, I should say. So let's go on to different planting options. We've got the floral planter just to get you started, thinking about maybe you want some flowers along with those vegetables. Maybe you're just focusing on flowers and want to add a little more happy feelings in your yard in this when we can't get out and about here in 2020. Here's some ideas, and I didn't provide any links for this because you can Google planter combinations, floral planting, vegetables and flowers together. You'll find all those kind of things on the internet. But here's some fun ones: purple or pink fountain grass, sun lover, with some of those smaller little, and I don't know my annuals all that well, little petunia type flowers. Here we've got a fuchsia plant. Oh, no, this is the angel wing begonia, I think. This looks like petunia over here. Anyway, those are some great ones. Here's the sweet potato vine. You know, you can start your own sweet potato vine. You can also take your coleuses from the year before and take clippings for them. I mentioned that, I think, earlier, that I had trimmed back my coleuses all ready to start some rooting. Also, some of your vining plants, some of the Swedish ivy, different ivies, you can start those cuttings and fill out those nice planters. Here's a fun idea with a monochromatic theme. Always makes a lovely arrangement when you do everything in one color. Balconies for those renters or people with limited space, limited sun. You've got a sunny balcony, utilize that. It makes it attractive and can give you some produce. It looks like a little bit of rosemary right here. Speaking of rosemary, other herbs can be grown in a lot of different ways. We'd seen the shoe rack that hangs on the back of a bedroom door. They can be used, but here we have some one-sided baskets with hangers. I'm sure these are lined with a plastic more than likely, more than not, and those you would need some drainage. The core or the fiber from coconuts that they often use in baskets like this as well do dry out a little faster. A plastic will keep it moist. So if you've got issues with that, if it's in really bright sun and you're watering it a couple times a day, remember watering the soil, not the leaves. You want to get the water to the soil. If you water the leaves in this kind of situation, it's just going to roll off. It's not going to get down in there and help those roots that need that water to pull up into your plant. Here we've got more options. I am a recycler, do-it-yourselfer, so things like cutting a barrel in half. I've seen this where they've taken cinder blocks and used this to store firewood. So you got a 2x4 on this side and a 2x4 on the other side of the cinder block. But here they've used it for this half barrel idea. Of course, there's drainage in there. Some holes have been drilled. It's deep enough for a tomato. So when I talked earlier about making sure that you have the right container size, you want to make sure that all of these will work. Of course, the soda bottle idea here is not going to work for a tomato. It'll work for your herbs and some other little things. Here's a nice size container for your tomatoes. So you've got the bins. If you're a renter and you've got gravel along the side of the house of your rental property, this would be a great way to grow tomatoes where you're not digging in the landlord's soil and causing issues. But and of course, if you've been given permission, that's great. But if you haven't, this is a great way to do it. And then make sure you trellis those up. And we'll talk a little bit more about tomatoes. So the soda bottle idea over here. Here's another one. I've done this technique where I've grown herbs in soda bottles. Right here, just drill some holes, or actually take a hot, something hot and poke holes in there. You want to poke holes in the bottom for drainage. Here they've recycled some old dressers and made it kind of whimsical and cutesy little bit, but it's fun too. And lining those with plastic, drilling holes in the bottom will save this for a few more years. Eventually, you're going to have some rotting going on, but makes for a fun, interesting little floral arrangement and gives you some herbs. And this looks more like it's a succulent arrangement, but some options there. Wayfair has tiers like this. Looks like a strawberry planting, maybe with something different on top. I believe this was a Wayfair kit as well. Your garden centers will have these big pots that can be used over and over. Easy to move around in the sun, especially if you put the little wheelie guys underneath. And if you just buy one board of the compressed recycled plastic decking and screw those together and put some wheels on, makes an easy little way to move these into the sun on those if you need to extend your sunny areas. Vegetable pallets for vegetables is another option, but there are some things to consider. You want to make sure that they are not treated with methyl bromide. They'll be labeled with MB on there. Typically, if you don't see that MB on there, it is safe to use as far as what I've read from the university sites, but I would be more apt to use them if it's got the HT or heat-treated stamp burned into them. Even if they are heat-treated or killed and dried, you want to make sure that if it has any stains on there, you really consider whether this is going to be safe for planting vegetables. It could have chemicals spills on there. Either way, you want to wash your pallets with hot soapy water or bleach and let them dry completely before using them for food plantings. You can use the lasagna method in this, where you do some layering. I have actually taken a pallet and opened it up and placed in there and then secured in there. So I've taken a board or two off the back so I could slide in an entire back of, I believe it was Miracle-Gro potting soil. And then I cut slits where my cursor is. You can see I cut some slits and I planted my green leafy vegetables in there. Great way to keep your greens away from the bunnies because it's up vertical, and it made for an interesting way to grow. I haven't used that for a while. That was along the side of the house. I attached some legs on the bottom so it wouldn't tip over and made it safe so in wind it would stay upright as well. Of course, I did put drainage in the bottom too, so you want to remember to put that drainage in those containers. Now, this is kind of an interesting little, kind of almost a square foot gardening concept, the way they've removed some of the wood on that. Shallow rooted plants do best, so peppers, peas, beans. Cucumbers could work in there. Strawberries would work fine. And some links are available. I don't see the red star, but I know that this is available to you. Oh, this is available to you too, my indoor ideas. Bringing those herbs inside in the fall. This has the kind of dimensions. These boards, because this is a double hung window in my back bedroom, so that would be this particular picture. These boards just rest on these blocks that are attached to screwed into the wood, so I can lift that, wash the window, open the window, that type of thing. This one is also included. This is a side sliding window, so I can just reach in between here, avoid my cactuses, and open and shut that window to get some fresh air in. So these instructions are included too, if that's something you'd like to do. So, questioning on some of these items. Let us know if you have any questions about some of the growing options, more indoor, the vegetable pallets, container gardening, balcony, floral mixes, and so on. Starting sweet potatoes vines at home, Google that and get that started if you want, even now. So a little bit more on vegetable gardening. Let's go through and talk about some suggestions on how to do to utilize your space the best, as we have limited space. Succession planting is a great thing to consider. Early harvesting radishes, they like the cooler temperatures. You're going to be harvesting them earlier before they start bolting, which is sending up their seeds, shoots, and then planting those with the later harvesting carrots. So what you'll be doing is taking both those seed packets, mixing them up in a container, and then carefully planting them in those rows or in that space. Time strategy is another one to consider, similar concept, but you've got your slow-growing cabbage, planting them with their earlier harvesting arugula or root crops like beets. You'll be eating the beet greens too, I hope, because they're delicious. Or planting them with dill. Be a very attractive way and effective way to use your space. Fast-growing bush beans. You'll be removing that entire plant once you've completed your harvest. And then maybe planting in between those bush beans your tomatoes or peppers. How about utilizing your part shade areas too? That's something that I have to do because I have so much shade. A lot of these plants will grow. I have links for you on some of those plants that do okay in the shade. Maybe not high a produce, and maybe they actually will last a little bit longer because the heat isn't going to be such an issue. Spinach will start stressing with the heat, and that would be another way to extend the life of your spinach plant before it starts bolting. Have you heard of the Three Sisters method? Here's a diagram of that. You've got your corn stalk. I don't have room for corn. Hope you do. I love Sweet 100, Sweetie, I think was the one I used to grow. Sweet 100 was my tomato I enjoyed growing. Beans growing up the stalk. Squash grows around. Here's a nice diagram or representation of combining those leeks with some of your greens. So, good way to utilize your space and get the most out of your space. You may have heard about the need to rotate crops. Farmers do it. My daddy did it. Rotated crops all the time. When he grew his soybeans, then he went back and planted his other crop, corn, back in there. Soybeans, any of the legume family, will add nitrogen back into the soil, which plants need to grow. If you remember, N for nitrogen is for those leaves, and the leaf nodes, N for nodes, leaf nodes. And that's an important way to benefit your soil. My tomatoes are heavy feeders. That's really what I want to focus on. But growing my string beans and peas, those legumes will help those areas. So because I do tend to grow an indeterminate tomato, which grows on and on, we'll talk about that in just a bit. Those are kind of a vining obelisk that I plant those on. And this next year, my string beans will be growing on that to help heal that land, and also to give it a rest so that any pathogens that may have gotten into the soil from the tomatoes, which tends to take place, will dissipate and give that soil a rest. So think about growing in, rotating your plants. I know that's really hard for those of us who have small growing areas. And as with container gardening, you're going to want to, if you're going to pasteurize that soil, maybe consider newer soil or with that tomato plant, and make sure to fertilize well. Here's a great little graphic that you're going to find in your handout as well. It's about companion planting. There's your plants that do well together, plants that like to buddy up in the same container, and plants that really shouldn't grow close together. They just either will attract the similar type of pests that will encourage those pests to come that way, because they can sense the plants and they will congregate. One thing that I've noticed with my Japanese beetles, when I have Kiss Me Under the Garden Gate, yes, I did plant that, and that's why it's on the don't plant list, because it takes so much space. But that plant is a favorite of Japanese beetles, so I haven't had as many issues with my grapes because of that. So that's what happens when you have plants that attract the similar type of pests. We plant them together, then you're going to have more issues. So one reason, again, to consider companion planting and what to plant next to each other or not. Here we've got a graphic about tomatoes, since we've been talking a little bit about tomatoes, and I mentioned the indeterminate, which I tend to grow in ground, especially where I have the obliques that they can grow up. The indeterminate tomato will grow 6 feet or more, so that's indeterminate, indefinite, if that helps you think about that. Those are the ones that will maybe take a little bit more room or do really well in a hanging basket, especially if it's a lighter tomato where you've got the cherry tomatoes that are indeterminate, or a lighter Roma tomato that doesn't get so huge like Big Boy or some of those gigantic ones. You won't worry about them splitting and breaking your branches of your tomato. Determinate is more bush-like. Handle those container plants a little bit more. They'll still grow up to 4 feet. And with the determinate, you don't have to be concerned about pinching off the suckers. And I actually didn't know about this myself, but here's a great graphic from one of the universities showing you how to pinch. I've always pinched as soon as I see something. I just get in there and nip it off. But here it shows you where you should actually pinch. So you've got it coming from where it's connected to the leaf and the stem, the branch and the stem. You got the leaf nodes coming up, and so you've got 3 branches. You pinch right here. Having those extra leaves actually does give some shade to those tomatoes when you've got them in the hot sun where they like to grow. But having these extra leaves will give a little bit of filtered sun and shade as that sun rotates from east to west and setting sun, so that you have less cracking. So great to know. I'm going to be excited to try that this year. With tomatoes, not only do we want to talk about what's good to plant in the containers, what's you want to have really work hard to trellis or to cage, but the determinate tomato tends to give you your fruit all at one time, where the indeterminate will give you your fruit throughout the season a little bit more. Also with tomatoes, don't hesitate to bury them deeper in the ground. Give them a little bit more chance to develop stronger root system. Bury them, take a few leaves off the bottom and get them in deeper. You've maybe even seen where you can lay it down horizontally to get it in the ground if you don't dig as deep, but get them deep enough so that you have some great root system. Another thing people have done is take like a milk carton and punch a few holes in it. So let's say on this side of the tomato we have a milk carton with a screw top, cleaned it really well. Punch a few holes on on the side facing the tomato, fill it up, and bury it all the way down to the neck next to it so you get good deep watering down to that root system. Splashing up against the leaves too is really going to cause some mold and some issues with your tomato plant, so make sure you don't have splash up. Water it gently. That container, like I said, that milk carton will be a good way to keep your tomatoes healthy. We have questions regarding any of this information. Please let us know. Everything from your vegetables, companion plant, tomatoes, and such. Write those down. Questions about determinate, indeterminate tomatoes. Write those down. Type those in on the comments, and one of us will get back to you. Before we close out for the day, for this presentation, I do want to mention Integrated Pest Management, IPM. The mission of Minnesota Extension IPM program is to foster the development and adoption of IPM to generate economic, environmental, and human health benefits. We work in partnership with stakeholders from agriculture, urban, and rural settings to identify and address relevant priorities for research, education, and outreach. What is IPM? It's a way to think about what your pests are doing, how they're interacting with your plantings, with your garden. First thing that I want to mention about IPM is identifying and monitoring the issue. What do you have? Is it really decimating your plant? Is it just here today, gone tomorrow type plant? Can you deal with this insect or this pest without anything real aggressive like chemicals? Evaluate, like I said, what's going on. And then what's your preventative methods? Can we just do a little wrapper on the bottom? Can we pick up some of those slugs? Can we contain some of those earwigs like we've talked about, or cage up things so the bunnies aren't going to be an issue? And then take that action, like I said, the caging, if it's just a physical barrier you can provide, or like with this little sticky substance where it just catches has an attractant on it that will get that pest to stick to the sticky paper, and it's not a big impact on pollinators or other pets or animals or children. And then monitor what the results are and start all over again. So here's some of those pests. I guess I hadn't talked about them yet. I've got a few listed here. Here's some more. If you're not sure what they are, got Japanese beetle. There's the slimy slug. And anybody know what this ugly guy is? That's earwig. So let's see, how do we take care of some of these? Earwig, one way to do it that I haven't used, and I'll just let you know what mine is in a second, but equal parts of soy sauce is to track them, and some vegetable oil to get it sticky on their legs and such. Put that in mixture in a small plastic lidded container, and poke some large holes, or holes large enough for the insect to get in, but they won't find their way out. So you punch from the outside in, and then bury that small container, plastic container, in the ground. And that's darks. They need something dark to hide at night. Is what they do, and so that'll provide the darkness, and then they'll stay in there. Japanese beetles, you want to pick them, especially morning or evening. They're a little slower with those cooler temperatures. Take off those leaves that they've chewed on too, if you can, without totally stripping your plant. The chewed leaves emit an airborne chemical that will attract more of them. So that's the best way to handle them. Slugs, pick them off those leafy surfaces. They'll be underneath your there's leaves, under rocks, under debris. Black plastic is great if you can lay that down in the morning. Go out and just scrape them off, throw them away. Chicken grit can help. That will be a coarser surface for them around some of your plants that they tend to really want to go to, and it'll keep them away from them. Squirrels and bunnies and chipmunks. Oh, I have so many of those. We use a lot of chicken wire. I cut that in half. I've got tons of it. I actually create a nice circle of them, break the wires off so I can twist them around and make a nice circle. I've got some that are huge that go around some of our lilies. They like to chew those leaves of the lilies. And then I just take stakes around to hold them down in place. It can be bamboo or just sticks. I even use some of the decorative things on metal pipes that'll go around, so maybe have a little luminary circle around there. Another thing to do for some of your potted plants, or I've done this with hostas where I've got so many roots around my birch tree and my maple tree. I'll put rocks, larger rocks, or so around them, and that keeps them from digging those up. And then they'll move on to another one, and I move those rocks around those until they finally kind of settle down a little bit. New plantings are really interested in those. Chipmunks really like to dig those up, squirrels. So keep that in mind to keep those away. If you have any questions about pests, integrated pest management, please again put those in the comments. And as I'm closing out, if you have just a little bit of time to answer these questions, and A1 means for question A, didn't really get what I wanted. 2 would be somewhat, 3 definitely, or you can make a comment. The information provided by the University of Minnesota Master Gardener Volunteer, that's me, was clearly presented. You can put A1, not really, A2, somewhat, A3, definitely. And so on for the next questions. B is additional resources from the University of Minnesota Extension. Research was provided for continued growth. C, I enjoyed this presentation and will consider attending further Olmsted County Extension Master Gardener Volunteer presentations and encourage others to attend as well. Whoops. D, I learned about the Olmsted County Extension Master Gardener program and would like to learn more information. You can feel free to message us or leave your information if you want, but message us is better. And just so you know that in your handout you have the email address and the Facebook or the other phone number that you can contact us. And then in the comments, is there a topic that you would like one of us to present? Let us know about that. And if you have ideas how we can reach out to the diverse people of our community, we really want to touch and help assist as much as we can everyone in our county, in our community. Upcoming presentations are listed here. We have a presentation by Kelly Ray Patrick and Diane Sneeve on February 20th, Growing Your Own Produce. I'll be doing a presentation on March 16th, both in the morning, late morning, and in the evening on planning for canning. Pollinators and Rain Gardens will be presented April 20th by Tom Bellinger. Kelly Ray Patrick again will be presenting Clean Water. It starts at home on May 13th. And those here you see are part of 125 Live. And I'll be doing a presentation on the benefits and how-to of houseplants coming up as well. University of Minnesota does its best to get us out into the community. Olmsted County has been really aggressive in trying to help in many ways as we can. So these are some of this is some of the data from 2019. Last year was kind of a bust, as you know, but we are always looking for more master gardeners. If you're interested in the program, want to learn more, this information is in your handout, and as is this, our phone numbers, email address, and so on. Thank you. Let us know if you have any other questions. We appreciate you joining our Facebook group, and we are always excited when we can give some input and help to those in our area and beyond. Thank you so much. Sources are listed on the last page of this video.